By now, if you're here, it means that you've done the course syllabus quiz. It means that you know what the syllabus is about, that you went over the syllabus, and that we aligned expectations. You know what you're facing. If for some reason you haven't, you joined, I don't know, last minute or anything like that, please make sure that you do it. We have an OSF. OSF is our open science framework. This is where I upload everything. So the way that I got here was by going to my website, going for teaching courses. Then I opened the Psych 2071, and then it opened this. And from here, I looked at the, you have the course syllabus, you have the playlist on YouTube, and you have all the videos over here, including the tutorials. There's one about how to use Slack. If you still haven't joined the Slack, this is how we make announcements. If you want to know what's happening in the class, if you want to know what's happening in the tutorials, please join and watch the video on how to use Slack. And the course materials, including the lecture today, is over here. I sometimes upload this after the class, especially if we have all kinds of experiments, but sometimes I upload this before the class so you can follow me. And this is one of these classes. So we're talking about JDM and game theory, and there's also a handout that I'll ask you to download and work together with me during the class, so you can go over here. In addition, one of the advantages of having the YouTube thing, as you can see over here, is that you have like a playlist. In addition to this, one of the reasons why you would want to use the playlist on YouTube and not the video on the OSF is because it takes me a bit of time, but I do chapters. So you can jump to all sorts of things. So the first bidding that we did, the second bidding that we did, sunk cost fallacy, the books that we discussed, Dan Kahneman, Dan Ariely, decoy effect, mental accounting. It just makes it easier for you to find what you're looking for in the video if you want to go and revisit some of these things. So this is about our OSF. We have a team. Perhaps you got to know the team in the tutorial. If not, some of them are sitting here. So we have Christy and Katie. Devin, I think, is joining us on the Zoom. We'll get to meet him as well. So Christy is kind of like coordinating things for us across the 3 sessions, the 2 courses, 3 sessions, where we do all these projects. So she's the main one that you'll hear from in terms of announcements and tutorials and all sorts of updates about what's happening in the course. We have Devin and Katie that will be guiding some of the groups. So they will be supporting you in how to do your research projects, how to do your assessments, how to do all sorts of things in the course. Plus, in addition, we have Kit and Chinyu from last semester. They graduated already, so they're not tutors in this class, but they will be supporting you by giving you feedback. They have a lot of experience. They've published these things. They did really well in their projects. So they will provide you with some feedback. So you've got both myself, the tutor team, the tutors from last semester who are still around and are going to help you. And in addition to this, you'll have the entire scientific community to support you in each one of the steps that you'll get. So one of the first tasks that you'll have to do once you've formed your team and that you've set your team contract, you've worked together in order to align expectations. You've aligned expectations with me for the most part with the syllabus. Now it's time to align expectations with your teammates. So once you've done the team contract and all of that, the first assignment for you is the RRR assessment. What this RRR is, replication register report. What does that mean to do an assessment? You'll be going over some of the projects that we've done in previous years. Some of you will do projects that other students have done in this course. Some of you will go over similar replications that I've done with my thesis students. This will allow us both to check one another. You'll be checking me and the work that I've done with my students. In the next year, somebody will check your work. But in addition to that, you will learn how to do a replication. So by observing somebody, by looking at what it is that they've done, by looking at both the original and the replication, you'll be able to learn how to do a replication. Plus, you'll learn a lot about what the replication is about. And there's some really interesting judgment and decision effects. So rather than just me summarizing things for you or playing some games in the classroom, you'll be able to see the methodology, the design. So this is a first step. Before you do your own replications, I want you to see what a high quality published or well-designed replication in a thesis looks like. So it's not that you're diving completely into the replications and extensions without any knowledge. The first step is assessment. So many times when I don't know how to do something, I set for myself to give a workshop on it, thereby forcing myself to become proficient in something. By teaching something, by assessing something, you become proficient in it, in this, and then you can do your own projects. So we have a lot of stuff for you. Many of these things of what is registered reports, why do we need registered reports, is done in the other class, Advanced Social Psychology. I will not go over this together with you. It has a lot to do with the science crisis, with the need for open science, and all of that. However, we provide a lot of information for you. This is a slide taken from the other class. You have two tutorials that were done, one by Christy and the other one by Kit, that take you step by step. You have a template, a very elaborate template of how to do an assessment, what to do in each step. So it's a rather, I think, 1 hour, rather long kind of process. So you can go through that at any time, whenever you feel like it, in your own spare time. And then the tutorials are sort of like if you want to discuss something. So it's not like you come to the tutorial and you just passively sit and watch something. You can do this in your home, in the library, wherever. But if you come to the tutorial, the expectation is that you have something that you want to discuss. We'll sit together with you, the tutors will sit together with you to help you in your specific task of your specific assessment. So do your homework, work on this together with your teammates. Problem-based learning is that you have a problem and you need to face this by yourself, but you're not alone. So we will be using the tutorial time to give you hands-on, personalized feedback on your specific task. So we have one for the RRR assessment. So we have two for the RRR assessments, and we also have a tutorial about effect sizes. So Chinyu from last semester has a very elaborate effect size guide on a Google Doc that everybody can contribute to. It explains to you what is an effect size. Actually, I'm going to show this to you. So if we go over here, also on my website, and we go to this mass replication project, we have all these resources, and they're all here. And in these resources, you can see, oops, don't jump around. You can see that we have a guide for how to use R and Jamovi. We have a guide on how to do replications and extensions. We have a guide, and this is the one that I'm referring to, on how to calculate effect sizes, confidence intervals. And if you double click on this and you go into it, so everything, of course, you can find this. We'll make this available for you. It's on the syllabus, and then we'll announce each one of these. But you can find this also on my website. And over here, you can see a very elaborate guide of what is an effect size and what are the benchmarks for different effect sizes. So perhaps the one that you're most familiar with is a correlation, but also Cohen's D for differences between experimental and control. And then how do you calculate effect size for a t-test? The different kinds, you don't need to know the equations, but there's a very simple kind of code that you can copy and paste to R. And Chinyu is now working on showing you exactly how to do this on articles. So you'll have a very elaborate guide, and then you have step-by-step showing you how to do these kind of things. Even if you don't know R, don't worry about it. The tutorials and the video by Chinyu is very, very step-by-step, very, very clear. So even if you don't know R, it will give you detailed instructions of how to get things done. It's pretty straightforward. Plus, from what I've seen from previous semesters, students nowadays are very good at figuring these things out. If you ask a scholar here, programming language in R, they get scared. seems like students here are much more friendly towards that. Plus, R is now becoming a lot friendlier. We also have RR assessment templates. So all the templates are very detailed, and they have instructions, and they take you step by step on how to do all sorts of things. Oh, I don't know why it doesn't open. But we'll go back to this one. So RR assessment templates, I'll double click this. So once again, you'll see that everything is very well defined. It looks a bit like a manuscript. So you can just jump ahead to like what the abstract is and you know, some details. So why was it important to replicate? What is the effective phenomenon? What do you think it would replicate successfully, and so forth. Plus, in addition to that, as you can see here, you have all the examples from last year and the year before that. So you can have a look at what others have done and learn from them. You can adopt whatever it is that you want. You have different targets. So it doesn't really matter that you see everything openly. Yours is going to be a little bit different, but you can adopt everything that they write. You can take, copy, change, whatever it is that you feel like you want to do in order to do a good assessment of your own target. Any quick questions on this? I know it's a bit of a rush, but the tutorials will explain everything in more detail. Yeah, okay. All right, so today we're going to take our in-class experiments into a one level higher. And most of today is going to be us playing all sorts of games where I'm going to explain that game to you, and then you'll make all sorts of predictions, plus think what it is that you want to do. I'll give you a handout. I'll give you some time to think about this, and then I'll try to do this, facilitate this together here in the classroom. There's no right or wrong answers to any of this. This is meant to be a discussion, a debate. The main premise of this whole thing is that we're going to use game theory, which is a well-established methodology in economics and to some extent in psychology, in order to gain some insights about economic behavior. So this week we're going to do a lot of game theory, and I'm going to explain exactly what that looks like. This is the main guide that we'll be talking about the entire session. It's referred to in the literature as the Homo economicus, the human maximizer. The assumptions about this guy: he's 100% rational. He's focused on money as an incentive. And whatever choice you'll give him, he'll always go for the option that will give him the most money out of that. So in any of these games, I'll ask you both what you would do, what do you think others will do around you, and then I will ask you to also think, what do you think Homo economicus would do? And then we'll try to compare all of this. So what are your predictions about what human behavior is, what you would answer, and then what do you think the Homo economicus, based on economic models of rationality and maximizing, is going to answer? So most of the context around this is that there is sort of like you and a stranger participate in some kind of a lab experiment. So this is what we're going to do here, a lot of lab experiments. The assumption usually is, even though we're here in a classroom and I am going to match some of you with each other in order to have some kind of interaction, but the assumption is that you've never met. Most of these experiments, you get some random people and you put them together in a lab. You don't know who the experimenter is and nobody knows of your decision. What would you decide? This is the basic setup. But we're going to play with the setup. So we're going to change some of these assumptions. But basically, when we talk about the Homo economicus, we're talking about strangers who need to facilitate trade or participate in a market without knowing much about each other. We have a handout. Actually, yeah, I have a handout. So you can either scan this with your mobile or you can go on this link. It's pretty straightforward, the mgto.org/JDM week 3. I think last week it was a little bit slow, so give it some time. Unlike previous week, there are no two versions. It will say version A, but all of you are seeing the same version. Another option is to go to the OSF and download this from there. I'll do this together with you. Yeah, so if you go to the OSF and you go to week number 3, you'll see that there's JDM 3 class handout. Now, I'll ask you, you'll see that there's a lot of experiments over there, starting from experiment 3A. So I'll give you some time to think about each and every one of these game theory paradigms. So this is what it looks like. And you can either do this on your laptop, or perhaps if it's on your mobile, it's a bit more difficult, perhaps write it next to you. But I do want you to try and come up with a number and write this down for you so that you don't fool yourself. One of the things that we think is that we make a prediction and then we see what happens and then we update our prediction to match what it is that we saw. So in order to not fool yourself, just write stuff down or update this in your Word document. The first experiment that we're going to talk about is this dictator giving game and the game theory paradigm. So here we're talking about a dictator. A first player, the dictator, gets an endowment. He gets a cash prize from the experimenter. So that's me. And determines how much to give to a second player. The recipient has no influence over the outcome. So you have two players. One is the dictator, dictates how much to give, and the other one is the recipient, and the recipient can't do anything. So the question is, as the dictator, saying that you are the dictator, how much would you dictate splitting, giving out of your 100 to your classmates? And whatever it is that you decide that you're going to give, the other classmate must accept. So there's no way for the other person is passive. So 2 questions for you. What is it that you would give? And then if you remember the Homo Economicus, 100% the rational model, what do you think they would give in this kind of paradigm? For now, let's just say that there's no provided reason. You get it out of nowhere. Try and make a decision about how much you would give. The other thing I want you to think about is not only what your prediction is, what your decision is, but also what your prediction is for what other people will do in this situation. So what I'm going to do while you're answering experiment 3A and experiment 3B is also open our Mentimeter. Yeah, but the assumption is that both of them are in a room. There is an experimenter. The experimenter gives 100 to the dictator, which is you, and then you decide how much to give to the other person in the room. Good. So we have 7 participants. Just before I show you the results, what do you think the Homo economicus would do in this situation? What is the rational, 100% rational decision in this paradigm, the dictator game? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry?
Just don't give money.
Don't give any money at all. Yes, is that what you thought as well? Yeah, why is that?
Because you need to maximize.
Yes, so the maximum here is what?
It's the one.
100, keeping everything. Yeah, does that make any sense? Now, what do you think your predictions are regarding what others would do in this classroom before I show you the results? Do you think others in the classroom are Homo economicus? Sorry?
Probably not, because there are some other factors that will influence.
Okay, like what?
Like if everybody knows, if like the person receiving the money knows that you're keeping money from them, maybe the answer would be different, I guess.
Why is that? They must accept. Why would that matter?
Because even though they must accept now, they might beat you up later.
Okay, maybe there's a future exchange.
And it might affect your and their relationship afterwards. Like,
okay, so already here we're bringing relationship into it. Let's say, for example, the assumption, from the Homo economicus situation is that you're strangers and you'll never meet again. What do you think will happen then?
they'll just keep all the money, because if
keep all the money,
that they'll never meet again, that the way to maximize current and future profits.
You're talking about yourself, or you're talking about your classmates?
The Homo economicus.
Oh, the Homo economicus. And us here in this classroom, what do you think will happen in this situation? Completely strangers?
I think people here in this specific class will probably keep most of the money.
Let's put a number to this most.
I think the number that shows that there might be about 20 or so, I guess. I'm just guessing.
20 they'll give or they'll keep.
Give 20.
They'll give 20 out of the 100, keeping 80, giving 20. Why this number of all the numbers?
Because it kind of feels like a number that would kind of reassure themselves that I'm not being selfish, I'm not keeping all the money for myself,
Mhm.
but also keeping most of the money.
Okay.
Like,
Does-
it's kind of like
good,
paying to, like,
good.
comfort yourself.
Yes, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
I think another factor that will determine the amount to give is the decision anonymous? If
Is the decision
anonymous?
anonymous? Okay.
Yeah, because voting in Mentimeter, we wouldn't know which person decide to give how much.
Okay.
If we just if you require us to shout out the number we want to give.
To shout like in a classroom.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I think that will be different.
So whether the decision to how much to give, whether this is kept confidential or whether this is shared publicly. Okay, we'll get to that. Very good. Anything else? Yes.
But for me, regardless of anonymity, I'll
Yeah.
actually do 50.
Confidentiality.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll actually do 50-50 because and also
But
regardless
you will do or others will do?
I would do.
Okay, you specifically will do.
Yes. I'm
Okay.
not sure how others would see this because I think others would be highly influenced by economic status. So
Okay.
for example, how rich they are, maybe they don't care about the 100, or maybe they really need the 100. I think that has an influence, but I'm not sure about the people in this room.
Okay, so individual factors regarding the dictator, whether the dictator needs all the money or doesn't need all the money,
Yeah,
will
and-
affect how much they'll give.
And also if the dictator knows how much the other person needs the money.
Okay,
I think that will also have an influence. But for me, when I
Okay.
don't know anything, I would
Hmm.
personally do 50-50
50-50, why?
because I feel like the experimenter had the intention of me splitting the money. And then regardless of
The experimenter.
yeah,
Oh,
because,
demand effect. Okay.
because that was in the context, right? The experimenter gives you this money
Mm.
and asks you how much you want to split, right?
Mm.
And for me, this is something out of nowhere. So it's like a bonus to me. I could take it or not, but
Mhm.
since I'm taking it, I don't mind sharing with the others. And
Okay,
it's-
why 50? Why not share $1?
because I feel like it's something that's more fair. Like
Okay,
if it's
fairness.
if it's given
Right.
to me and then like they ask me specifically for the purpose of splitting, then
Mm.
of course I'm going to split it half.
Okay,
For me, I could live with or
so
without the
not
money.
necessarily has to do with experimenter expectations. It just seems like the fair thing to do. And in addition to this, you're also trying to anticipate what the experimenter might have wanted in this situation. These are two factors, right? They're not the same thing.
That makes it sound like a social desirability effect.
That's what I heard. Did you mean something else? No? Okay, think about it for any other things you wanted to raise?
I think
Yeah.
besides the social disability one,
Yes.
I guess he's trying to say like we are socialized into some moral standards.
Okay.
Given the situation, I didn't earn the money by my work or my
Yeah, came out of nowhere.
yeah,
Mhm.
come from nowhere. So
Yeah.
maybe you don't feel at peace just taking all that money.
Yeah.
And want to split.
Right. But you're making all kinds of assumptions about me as the experimenter. Perhaps social desirability means that I want you to give everything. Like, so this 50-50 is more about fairness than really about me. Like, you're trying to predict what it is that I want, but it's not clear in this situation what is it that I want and if I have anything that I want, rather than just give you money. But think about all these factors. If somebody in the back wanted to say something, you want to say something? How the stranger looks. Okay, why is that?
It might be a person,
Yeah.
stranger is in a poor economic status.
Okay,
And I'll feel that compassion, let them have the 100.
okay.
Show is a child or elderly. then in that
Child or
sense, I would
elderly.
have the like social obligation to do
Oh.
for the other people.
Okay, so one thing that you're saying that you will evaluate the social status of the person based on their looks, but in addition, all sorts of factors about who the person is might mean that you will give them more money. Just curious, if this is a child, how much would you give? If this is elderly, how much would you give? If it's me, how much would you give?
Usually, I'll probably give them like 100.
Oh, you would give them the 100. Complete.
If the child,
Okay.
I would want to give them a 100, but I think that the child may not know how to use the 100.
Okay.
Spend it on a candy. So I'll
On
probably
candy.
give like 50.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, you'll give them only 50 because they might spend it on candy.
Yeah, so I would also think that I shouldn't give them too much responsibility to money.
Okay.
They're not responsible enough yet.
Okay. You're punishing their irresponsibility by giving them less. Okay,
Wait, I have a
interesting.
question. Why do you want to give the elders 100?
That's kind of like, seem like they probably retired, and then they can just live it without time. Yeah,
But they could be
just kind of
retired.
like treating them like nice to you, but it's kind of like show up respect.
It's likely that they're richer than you. though.
Yeah. But
Okay.
their career, like, their career span is probably ended, and mine just started.
But you have an assumption that somebody who's elderly has more money than she does,
No, I'm saying probably.
Oh,
Probably.
on average.
Yes,
got
on
it.
average.
So a lot of the
That's
things
why
that,
I think
yeah?
the economics, like, the perception of their socioeconomic status doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
if that person looks like a super wealthy,
Right.
we don't need the money.
Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of things. First of all, you mentioned the social status, and then you tried to assess social status perhaps based on, if they're elderly or not. Then social obligations, because we respect the elderly, perhaps we need to give them more. Yeah, so like a lot of interesting stuff over there, and also like responsibility. What is my responsibility in terms of making sure that the kid doesn't buy candy? Interesting stuff. All of this is not included in the Homo economicus model. So this is already, we've seen all sorts of things that we think about, which are very psychological, right? Us making evaluations, us thinking about our beliefs, our society, social status, who the person is, who we are, who the experimenter are, is all sorts of trying to predict what the other person, are we in the same room? Is this a complete stranger? Are we going to meet this person again or not? Do we want to build a relationship? Yes or no? So already we see that this very, very small, well-defined paradigm can have all sorts of modifications for us to gain an understanding that we don't always behave like the Homo economicus perhaps would predict that we would. So if we look at this, I think most of you over here predict, so 13 of you said that the Homo economicus would give 0. I think one of you said that it will give 100. But on average, you agreed that it will be very, very close to 0. How much would you give? It's 33. So this is already definitely deviates from 0 and also deviates from your understanding of what Homo economicus is. So already we see this differentiation between what perhaps the economic model would predict and what the behavioral economics model in judgment and decision making actually would predict. So we try and take these factors into account. Now, if you look at the split over here, we see that we don't have anybody that would give 100. Most of you, 8, would split this 50-50, just like yourself. We have 4 that would give nothing, so behaving a little bit like the Homo economicus. So maybe there is something in the Homo economicus. Yes? Okay, you want to clarify? So you want to define whether you meet the person in a room, or whether it's like somebody out there. That would make a difference. Before I run this experiment, what is your prediction? What was your understanding here? Let's clarify this first. Wait, this a complete stranger or in a room? Not in a room, just like generally. Okay. And what would be different if this would be somebody together close in a room? Okay, so initially here, if I may ask, you gave a 0. Okay, so if this would be another one in a room, you would give how much? You would give 100, 100, higher, 50-50. It would be closer to the fair one. Good question. I just want to understand what you understood from this. So we have 2 situations that we wanted to clarify. 2 possible explanations. One is that you understood from this is that the experimenter is giving you 100 and there's somebody out there that you would split this with. How many of you understood the scenario this way? Okay, but you still gave 50-50? Gave more than 0? How much did you give? You gave 0? Okay, so you understood it in the same way you gave something similar. How about you? 50-50, even though it's somebody out there? Okay. How many of you understood this as somebody else together with you in a room? Some of you have? Okay. May I ask how much you gave? 50-50? You as well? 50-50? So interesting hypothesis on what perhaps would explain some shift towards fairness and 50-50. So we can test this. It's really good that you raise these hypotheses because sometimes the vignettes or the way that we explain things is not elaborated enough. So sometimes in your replications, you will see this vignette and you'll say, wait, I don't know what's going on over here and I don't know how people will interpret this. Let's run another condition where we clarify this. So this would be a really good extension. Terrific. In your handouts, I will ask after quite a few of those, what are your suggested extensions? In this case, you would say, I want to clarify whether this is somebody out there or whether it's somebody that is with me together in a room. That's a really good extension. So when I'm asking you about extensions, this is the kind of stuff that I want to do because then we can do a randomized experiment about this where we can do both conditions and we can randomize people one to this condition and one to that and then see if there's a shift from maybe 0 to a 50-50 split. Very good. Good that you brought this up. Perfect. Experiment 3B. I'm just going to show this quickly. Okay. So what is the difference between A and B? It seems like it's exactly the same thing. So if you look at this sort of thing, the main difference is that me, the experimenter, rather than giving this to the dictator, I give this to the other person. And then you, as the dictator, can decide how much you want to take from that person. It's basically the same kind of dilemma. The only thing is about the framing, about whether you're taking or giving. So the first scenario was about how much you're giving because you had the $100. Then you decided how much you want to give. In the second scenario, in B, it's very much the same. You have 100 Hong Kong dollars given to a different person, and you're deciding how much you want to take. Now, the first question is, what does the Homo economicus do in this situation? Is there a big difference from A to B? Is it the same scenario? Would the Homo economicus behave differently? And then what is it that you will do? And then what is it that you think others would do in the classroom? Right, so we'll go here. Good. All right, so how much would the Homo economicus take? 100. So that actually means that maximizing just like the first one. Is there any difference between the first one and the second one in terms of the Homo economicus? It's the same thing, right? Wants to maximize, take as much as possible, right? Now, what are your predictions about what we as a class did on average? How much would we take from the other person? So we saw the average from before was about 33, right? Would it be like 66 or would it be any different? What's your predictions? If it's difficult, tell me why it's difficult. Why would you think there's, what's difficult in trying to predict this? What kind of factors might come into this? What are the differences between A and B?
How
Yes.
the money wasn't given to you in the first place.
Right.
Wasn't specifically given to you. So by taking, it kind of feels like there's this kind of connection to like stealing, right? Like you're taking something that isn't yours.
Mhm.
So well, theoretically, even though you're allowed to take as much money as you want,
It's part of the rules of the game. Yeah.
The person you're taking money from didn't agree to have money taken from them, but they have
Consent. So consent.
So the
Terrific.
consent there is-
Okay. So the difference is in consent. So given that there's no consent, what is your prediction about the difference between A and B?
There'll probably be less people. There'll probably, on average, be less money taken from the first.
Okay, so in the first one, people kept on average 66, 67. How much do you think they will take now?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking the amount that this possible take will actually be the same as the amount of money that will be given.
Because we don't care about consent at HKU.
Not really, but because it feels like that. There's also the perception that the amount of money the money that was given to that person was free anyway. So with the conception of free
Okay,
money,
so
that
you're not
means-
really sure whether consent is a real factor here or not, but you're thinking maybe it's a factor.
Yeah, so for
Good.
some people, it
All right.
might be a factor.
All right.
of
So
free
you're
money.
thinking maybe it's a factor, but it doesn't seem like it might be strong enough factor because this is a game.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. I'll start with her. Yeah.
I think people will take less than what they gave because I think people.
It would
like
take
to
less
be-
than what? Yeah.
Yeah, I think people like to be consistent. Like I have already gave you this, and I don't want to disturb whatever like to do something against whatever I have did. I don't know.
Who has done something? I did. It's an experiment. Or what did you do?
I mean, I firstly gave the second person some money, and
Oh.
then
Oh.
now
You're
I
seeing this
usually
as a
get-
second step
Yeah.
to the same person?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I did not mean that this is the same person.
Oh,
Okay, so that's my bad. Did you understand it the same way, that this is the same person? Okay, I just meant, good that we clarify it. It's very important. Every time I realize that I haven't clarified things enough. So actually, this is a really good one, whether this is a second step to the first one or whether this is a whole new scenario. Okay, so this is a whole new scenario. That's what I meant.
sorry.
Good. Okay. So you explained how you would see this if this is a second step.
Yeah.
Now that you're thinking about this is a completely new scenario, what would be your decision now or your prediction about others? Think about this for a second. I'll go to you. Think about this.
So I think something that's different from the previous experiment
Yeah.
is that in the last experiment there might be endowment effect where people think that because they own the money now, it's more for them.
It's mine.
That's why it was like
It's not 100. I value this as more than 100.
yeah, that's why it was like less than 50-50, even if they wanted to be fair. I think that was my guess. And then
Okay.
but then leading up to this one, there was obviously the one with the consent and Stephen part. You know, I was also considering that. So my hypothesis is actually that it will be less than what they will, less than the previous amount. So I was like guessing something around 20, I think. Or no, actually I will 10. Yeah. I think
They will take 20 or they will leave 20?
They will take 10 from the other person
They will take 10.
without their consent in general.
Oh, well, that's a lot less than 60.
Because I think most
66.
people would. I think there was some influence with the considering that the other person is an actual person. You know, we're discussing about the elderly or like who the other person might be. And given that we don't know about the other person
Okay.
person might be someone who's really in need of this cash.
Okay.
So I think most people will go on the lower end, and I think a lot of people will go with 0 because.
Wow, you took this very far. You're like very like a lot of deliberation about what the factors that might come into play.
Yeah.
But if we put a number into it about consent, you've put consent at from 67 to 10. So consent is like 56, 57. This is the main factor here, aside from the other factors. Consent alone, how much would you quantify this as?
I don't know about consent alone because I was
Okay.
considering everything together, and that was like a wild guess.
Okay, yeah, that's why I'm pushing you to put a number behind it. What's a number? Think about this. What's your conclusion?
I'm actually thinking now because the other person has the ownership of that $100, and I'm actually asking not to say a favor, but I actually forced him to give me. But
Yes.
it's also I'm asking something. Maybe it gives me some psychological burdens to do so.
Yeah.
So that's the reason I think I will demand that.
Good.
Or others also.
Why is it more difficult for us to take than to keep? So you talked about endowment effect. That's one thing. What else is in there? Any other factors that might come into play? Yes, please.
I think I would take, at least for me, I would take more. I think if I
Take more than what?
take more money from, apart from giving, I may give $50, but if I take 60 or 70.
Oh, okay, why?
Because I think taking money from other who already making me hard feeling to other, and I already make some hard feelings, so why I don't take more?
Might as well. I'm already doing something bad. Might as well go all the way. Why 60, not 100?
Because just not that harsh.
Okay, punish, but not too much. Okay, interesting. How many of you had this kind of logic? No? Good, thank you for sharing that. Very interesting. Any other things that come to mind before I show you the results? Anything else you want to share? But already we had a lot of kind of factors that come into it. Have you quantified consent already?
No, because I don't think it's fair to pull consent away from the other because it's so entangled with other factors. So for example, like consent, if I know that person is super rich, I'm sure a lot of people.
I did not ask for a consent to get your evaluation of consent.
Can I say no?
You said not fair.
Yes, because I honestly think that consent is something that's so complex that
Okay.
has all the other factors influencing it. So without
Got
the
it.
other factors,
It wasn't that big of a factor in there.
Yeah, I would say.
Okay.
Yes.
You want to see this as a big package. Not
Yes.
fair to get you.
Yes, you
Okay.
can't buy just one of the package. You have to
Okay.
buy the entire package.
All right, interesting.
I'm also thinking about an action advice.
Action in action, yeah. In what sense?
Because, like in the giving one, I was just thinking, why I need to give everybody,
Okay.
right? And then in the other one, I was like, I should. Is that
Okay. So you're talking like reference points? What is the reference point? Or whether I need to take action or not take action in order to do something? Okay. Good. Think about how you want to clarify this. All right, we spent a lot of time on this. Let's see what's happening. So yeah, I think like I think now you have a consensus about at least what the Homo economicus is, but how much would you take? So if you compare this to what was before you had 60, right? 67, now you have 40. So even though it's exactly the same situation, because you had one, experimenter gave both of you sort of 100, and then there's a split between those, just whether this is framed, kind of like a framing effect, whether this is take or give, has created all sorts of things in your mind about whether it's consent, all sorts of evaluations about other factors, punishment we heard over there, perhaps action in action. So what is the reference point? Do I keep this or not keep this? So endowment, did I already own this? Do I evaluate this as 100 or more? So a lot of these really interesting things that we'll talk about throughout this course about all these effects like action effect, reference points, endowment effect, and so forth. But it's really interesting to try and quantify all these things of what's happening over here. And just by looking at your own decisions, you can see that there is a difference between the 67 and the 40. So by this very slight manipulation of the framing, we saw different results of exactly the same scenario. Now, at some point, one of you raised, I think over here, something about things being, sorry, you want to say something? No, I'm going to say, one of you said something about anonymity and confidentiality, you, right? Yeah. So our third and fourth, experiment 3, experiment 4, so C and D, are exactly the same scenarios, but the only difference is that everything is public. So what it is that you decide to either give or to take is public. And then the question is, would you behave any differently? Would other people behave any differently? So we'll go to the Menti. I'll give you a little time to think about this. We'll come back to this one. Yeah. So here's what I want you to do. Now it's all together because now you know the two scenarios. The only thing that we manipulated is based on this point of confidentiality, anonymity, is that we make things public. Would that change anything? Would that change your behavior? Would that change the assumptions regarding Homo economicus? So after you think about this for a while, go on the Mentimeter and put in your. And I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to ask you specifically for your prediction. Try and quantify what would be the difference between what we saw in the first two and then what happens with the public. Try and think about what is going to be the difference. So in the first one, we had like 66. The second one where we're taking was about 40. What happens if it's going to be public? Try and think about like what's the difference. We'll start from the easy part because you've nailed it in the last one. What would the Homo economicus do in this kind of situation? Would adding the public part to this make any difference? Nope.
This is actually kind of hard to quantify them.
Oh, okay. So it's more complicated. Why?
Like, if for example, the person was getting like $100. Oh wait, this is $100. So maybe
Yeah.
the person is getting $1,000 a month from like a friend because the friend thinks the Homo economicus is a nice person. Then if the person just goes and like takes $100 from another person, that person might call it stealing, and then thus
I got lost in all the explanation. Give me like a main word to explain what is the difference here.
The
What shifts in the Homo economicus?
I think that the kind of perspective that other people might have that might affect the money.
You think the Homo economicus is affected by the perspective of others?
Yeah.
In what way?
Because if the other people see that he takes $100 of a person, they might not trust them and might not give them like better deals on
Affect the long-term reputation
yeah, long-term.
of his ability to deal with others
Yeah.
and maximize utility in his interactions with others.
Yeah.
Okay. As a Homo economicus, what do you think to quantify this?
Like I think it's really hard to quantify because it depends on what factors happen.
Homo economicus really likes equations and he likes numbers. He
Yeah.
wants to put the money into it, right?
You can't really plug the numbers in. Like at least I can't plug
Mm.
the numbers in for
Okay.
how much he quantifies his friends and family's reputation towards his own reputation towards his friends and family.
Okay. Interesting. So let's put Homo economicus aside for a second and talk about us. You have some predictions about our classmates?
For the bidding, it should be closer to 50 than
Closer to 50? Okay. Why is that?
because as we predicted, more responsibility for the decision made if it's public.
Yeah.
And last time we did less than 50, which is not fair. And
Okay, so fairness is the number one issue. So if I understand, public equals fairness. Is that what we mean, or is there something more to that?
I think public means responsibility for
Okay.
reputation as he mentioned.
Reputation, but you can have a much nicer reputation if you give everything. Why is it 50-50?
Because you are allowed to take in this game.
Okay, because the rules of the game allow you, and there's something about perhaps splitting, the word splitting, something like that. Then it's okay for you. You're not going to get punished by anybody by doing 50-50. Would you benefit by being more than what the game, by giving more than 50? Do you think you would benefit from that in any way? Perhaps, okay. Did you see in the public one, did you see any difference between the giving and the taking? 50-50 in the first one, in the second one?
The second one is the juggling.
Okay.
On the one hand, you're allowed to take, but you are not encouraged to split. In the question, it didn't say that you are.
Okay, so you were very sensitive to whether the question had the split or not.
Yeah.
So you're not certain about that. Thank you. Any other thoughts about the public one? What did the public one shift about this? Yes.
I would say the give is probably going to be 50 or because there are
Giving
now
50 or more?
social benefits of giving more than 50, right?
Okay.
And then for the taking, I think it will be much closer to 0 because I think there's
Closer
also this kind of group polarization effect where we are kind of a group now.
Okay.
And then someone raised the idea of saying that, oh, it's about consent, it's about stealing,
Okay.
those kind of concepts. And
I
then
see.
now we wanted to conform to the group ideology.
Okay. So if we need to choose one word to say public equals what is the main consideration in giving and what is the main consideration in taking? Public does what? In the first one is
For the giving, I think it's social desirability.
okay.
For the taking, I think it's more group conformity.
Group conformity. Okay.
But I also think that the result would change if you
Conformity because you're worried that punishment or criticism, or what is it about the conformity?
It's about conforming to this kind of group, and you don't want to be like the outliers.
Okay.
Taking
Sense of belonging.
Yes.
I want to belong to a group. I want to conform with a
identity. Yeah.
group identity. Great. I love this, like this equals that, or this is the main. Okay, good. So we have some really interesting points made here. Thank you for that. Any other things that you wanted to talk about here before I show you the results? What does public do in giving and taking? Anything else? All right. So So already we've increased this. It's not exactly what it is that you anticipated, right? But it did rise from like 33 closer to 50-50. So from 33 to 44.6. And for taking 23. Okay, so here keeping about 55 versus, so we still see the differences here. And there is a shift just by introducing the public concept. It's not exactly what you had in mind in your predictions, right? Sorry? Is it or isn't it? I'm asking, I'm not telling. It is, okay. Can you make it into a sentence? What is it that you see?
For the beginning one, it's higher more than the
Closer to the fairness.
that it's not.
Okay.
And for the second one, I predicted that we will take less
Okay.
and not zero.
Take less than the previous one. Yes?
But not to
Okay. Okay. Terrific. Is this what you had in mind when you saw this? Now it's interesting that the Homo economicus, there was some adjustment here because people didn't do this 100 and 0. There was some kind of shift. So it seems like your kind of logic really affected the stuff over here. All right. My questions to you now. You got a taste of the experimenter hat. So you made predictions. We ran this on each other. Then we saw the results, and you've learned something from that. We're a very small sample. We don't need to overgeneralize from this. There's lots of academic papers on this that we can go and have a look. But it's important for you to go through this process yourself in order to make some predictions and see what happens and compare. Now, let's say that we would run this out there in the wild on a large sample, done well, given all the factors that we raised in this classroom. What is the most important extension, thing that you're curious about, that you want to look into? You can either type this or tell me.
I want to add something that it's not give or take, but there's like a portion of money put in front of you, and then you decide how much to take from it, and then the rest will be given to another unknown person. So like kind of like the middle in like both of these scenarios. And I'm curious if I'm
Wait, what is the change? What is the main change? Try and frame this clearly.
It's not giving or taking. So the money isn't directly given to me or the other person.
Okay.
It's like put in front of you, and then you decide how much to take from it, and then the other person gets the rest of the money. So it's like given to you in the first place or given to the other person in the first place. So it's like put there.
Oh, okay. I see. It's not giving or taking, it's something in between because it's put in front of you and then you can decide whether you want to approach it and take or leave it over there, something like that. Okay, so let's try and make a prediction out of that. What do you think this would introduce? Why is this so interesting for you?
Because it removes the kind of like the endowment effect that you have when the money is given to you. And
okay.
Also, there's no kind of social stigma from like the stealing kind of imagery gives you, right? So it kind of like, I'm guessing like kind of like somewhere in between. Like
okay.
if you run on this food might be somewhere around like $30 or something. So yeah, that's why.
Interesting. Very good. I like this. Yes, you wanted to say something?
I'm thinking of the individual differences.
Individual differences?
Like if the people care about his or her personal image would affect the money you want to give or take away, as well as the size of the public, like how large is the group? If it's just one person sitting behind me, I guess the effect would not be that dominant. Yeah.
How large is the public group?
As well as the how.
But let's focus on this one because this is easier to manipulate than individual differences. I like things that we can manipulate. So in this kind of thing, how would you? What would be like a manipulation here? What kind of conditions would you make?
Perhaps I will create additional two groups.
Two groups?
One with relatively small size, like 3 person around this large classroom, and another it may be like all of us sitting here.
Okay, so the public is 3 people. 3 people will know about your decision versus about 20 people will know about your decision. Good. Your prediction is?
I guess with a larger public size, with more people
Mm.
will donate, you will give more and take less.
You will give more and take less. Okay. So the shift that we saw over here will be larger.
Yeah. Yes.
If it's a smaller group, the shift will be smaller.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Okay. Very interesting. Did we have anybody? Yeah, we had one person. Let's see what they wrote. The number of bystanders, whether there's spotlight effect and false consensus effect in the giver or taker. I don't know what spotlight effect is. What is a spotlight effect? No? The number of bystanders. So it's a little bit like, I don't know if bystanders is like public, but how many people are actually observing or knowing your decision? So some similar themes over here. Okay, so interesting things to think about in terms of the extensions. After the break, we'll take this one step forward and make this even more complex. So we started from something very basic, where one person is deciding, and now we're going to complicate things by doing it really social psychology and social, where there's some interaction between two. All right, so the ultimatum game, please take a minute to go through this, all the scenarios. I will go through this with you. So in the ultimatum game, the first, we have two players. So now there's obviously both of them are in the same room together. There's no more question about whether this is an anonymous one. Now they're together and they see one another. And one of them is the proposer and one of them is the responder. So the first player, the proposer, conditionally receives a sum of money, and then he proposes, he or she proposes how much to give to the other player. Then the other player, the second player, the responder, chooses whether to accept or reject the proposal. However, if the responder rejects, both of them get nothing. So it's a little bit more interactive. There is somebody on the other side who is able to do something in response to your offer. So the question is different kind of question. So as the proposer, how much would you offer giving? And then just remember that the other classmate, the responder, has the power to reject your offer. And as the responder, you decide whether to accept or reject. What is the minimum sum that you would accept? Because anything under that, you will reject and both of you will get nothing. All right, so here I'm asking you, now there is this, now that we've seen a few of these rounds and we know our classmates and we know how they behave, I also ask you to try and predict their behavior. So the proposer, how much would you propose giving? So try and think also, as the classroom, how much would your classmates offer on average? So it will be interesting to see the difference between what is it that you're saying and what is it that you predict others would behave. And then the responder minimum offer that you would accept, and then predict the minimum that your classmates would accept. Plus the regular question regarding the Homo economicus, what would the Homo economicus do in this kind of situation? Okay, I'll let you do this. Let's start with the easy stuff. What would the Homo economicus do in this kind of situation? The responder Homo economicus would respond in what way?
You mean like what's the minimum amount that he or she will accept?
Accept, yeah.
One.
Yeah. Great. So assuming that this is the Homo economicus responder, what would the Homo economicus proposer propose? One time.
If it's one, then
One
it's,
time.
$1 each, I guess.
$1 each. Okay. Homo economicus. Yeah, the Homo economicus assumption, the economics assumption is that everybody is really rational. Everybody is behaving to maximize.
So both the giving and accepting are the same.
Homo
Okay,
economicus.
Then I'll take the one.
The one. Okay, good. So we have a consensus over here. Now, if we try and think before we actually see your response, what are your predictions about what is going to happen with our classmates? How would our classmates behave here? Let's start from the responder. What would the responder? The average classmate responder. What would they respond? You wanted to say something?
Probably between 0 and 50.
That's a big range. Yeah. Do you want to narrow it down for us?
If like it is really not like, for example, it's like below the money, you probably the responder will get out and just reject the offer, even though if I accept it, I will get more money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's try and make a prediction. There's no money for you on stake, so you can just go ahead and say a number. What number would you go with? What do you think our classmates are going to say as responders on average?
25.
25. Why did you choose that number?
And that's the average of 0 and 50.
Okay, interesting. Any other predictions? Thank you.
I'll say 20.
You'll say 20, not 25. You also, okay, why 20, not 25? Let's start with you.
I think it's because of like the way us Hong Kongers like quantify money is by
Us Hong Kongers. Wait, I just want to know, everybody here is Hong Konger?
But this is we're talking about Hong Kong.
Who is not, you're Taiwanese, right? Okay. Who is not Hong Konger?
I mean, people.
Oh, a lot. Okay.
Hong Kongers-
Wait, how come? It's a good opportunity for us to get to know people.
Sorry for-
No, it's okay. Let's keep that. Then we can look at also cultural differences.
Like people-
Hold on with your points. May I ask where you're from? So I know you. How about you?
Northeastern China.
Northeastern China? Which province?
Liaoning.
What? I don't know this province. Is it a big one, a small one?
Kind of big.
Oh, wow, my ignorance then. Okay, no, it's good. I get to know a little bit more about the men in China. Okay, great. How about you?
Eastern China.
Eastern China, where?
Zhejiang province.
Okay, that I know at least. Thank God. Okay, great. Which city, if I may ask?
Hangzhou.
Yeah, okay. I've been there a few times. Terrific. How about you? Sorry? US? That's also a very big place. We're in the US. They immediately stay northeast and east. It seems like in Boston? Oh, okay, terrific. How about you? You said something on not into anybody else that's not from Hong Kong? Oh yeah. In Hunan, okay. I know Hunan. How about you? Yeah. Sorry? Xilin province. Okay. Wow. Terrific. Okay. So not so much like a Hong Kong sample. No. I know you didn't mean this, but we can use the opportunity to get to know each other.
People familiar with Hong Kong, like people who like been here for a while.
People who look like they're from Hong Kong.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm just giving you a hard time for no reason.
Yeah, well, the big people, at least people who use Hong Kong money on a daily basis.
Oh,
People
okay,
who,
yeah.
Like they count in like units of 10, 20, and then 50, right? Because like that's the.
Oh, the counting method.
That's good.
Yeah, so it's like that.
Wow, that's super elaborate.
People will probably lean towards a value of 20 or 30 more than 25 because 20, if you want to pay $25, you have to get a bill of $20 and then you have to get 2 points out
Oh,
of it,
okay.
right? So it's, I think that based on my personal assumption is that people using Hong Kong money will probably have to 10, 20, 30, 40.
Oh, wow, that's super elaborate. I see.
Something like 25.
Got it. So if, say for example, let's say in mainland China we had a 25, or in Boston we had 25, then
like if it were like $1 and then we had to I had to put a number that would fall to the American like this for like 25 cents, right? Then I
Oh,
would
okay.
put it at about 25.
Wow, okay. Did not think about that. Thank you. But that's not what you had in mind.
Yeah, I
Why
like this
20?
explanation better, but
You like this one better than yours.
so my explanation is because I've seen similar experiments or played out before, and I remember it was a similar result to something.
You're memorizing other people's experiments. Please wipe out any memories of other classes. No. Okay, what did you see in the other classes or other experiments?
It was similar concept, and then where people it was to demonstrate that people are irrational. Like the rational thing would be to take any amount, like any amount is good amount. But
Okay.
then, like the experimenter demonstrated that people have a threshold. Like they will say, like I don't want your money anymore if it's that low, you know. But then I will personally take any amount. Yeah.
I see. Okay, terrific. So we got like we tackled a little bit of the responder side. How about the proposer side? So let's say 2025. Let's say that this is kind of like our logic, Homo economicus 1. How about the proposer? What would we propose on average? What's your prediction?
I think this one will be very close to 50 because it's like sharing money, right?
50?
Yeah, this is kind of like sharing money between two people. So like the quote unquote logic goes that you should split this down because you don't have the money until you decide how much the other person also has. So the other person can reject this time, right? So it's kind of like fair or something. Like, I don't know how
So this is really interesting because if, for example, the proposer followed your logic, that it's about 20 or 25, then they're actually losing out on 25 to 30 additional benefit that they might gain if they would propose better, right? So you're actually saying that there is a deviation between what people actually do and what people estimate that they would do. So this is really important to do in these kinds of games, to look at these gaps between the proposer and between the responder to see perhaps there is a place for us to capitalize on something, because if everybody is proposing 50, but you have the potential to gain a little bit more, if you propose higher, people will still accept this. Perhaps you can overperform them if there's some kind of a competition. Not in this case, but in kind of like a more free market. So it's really interesting that this is what you propose. You wanted to say something? You want to say something? No? You want it? Yeah, sorry. I saw a hand somewhere. Yeah.
My logic is somewhat different.
Different, yeah.
Calculating the expected value that you can get as a rational being, because if you really
The Homo economicus?
yeah.
Okay.
If you really propose $1, the probability that someone will accept is really low, and then you get
Why is it low?
because
I think that depends on whether the other person is also Homo economicus. It's like
Yeah.
if it's quote unquote normal, if the person you're giving money to.
No, let's say that it's us. It's us. Now we moved into our realm of reality.
then expected value, let's say equals the money you give times the probability that someone will receive the proposal.
Oh wow. Okay. You're including
Sorry.
probabilities. No, it's okay. Yeah. Okay. I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it seems like the way that you conceptualize both the proposer and the responder are a little bit irrational, because if you think about this, the Homo economicus, it's like if you get $1 it's better than just rejecting everything. Why would you reject this kind of thing? $1 is better than getting nothing. So it makes absolutely no sense. So if we try to put this into a word, what is the word that would define the way that responders are behaving here? What is it about responders here? Spite, okay, good. Let's try another word, perhaps. Sorry?
Dignity.
Dignity?
Yeah. So it's like you have $100 to share with.
Oh, you've shamed me in sort of way? Okay,
like,
dignity.
I'm not gonna take your petty $10.
Okay, you think that I would, okay, got it.
Yeah.
This kind of thing. Is that what you had in mind? Dignity?
Punishment, but basically
Punishment?
that's where dignity is
That's a lot stronger than dignity, right? So the response to dignity is punishment? Is that also the link that you saw?
Yeah, kind of. So
Okay,
it's like,
why did you think of me this way? Therefore, I must educate you. That kind of thing?
educate?
Educate,
More like,
punish?
let's make a.
Never do this kind of mistake again?
It's more like let's make a zero-sum game. Since if you want to be a jerk, I'll be a jerk too.
Okay, you've been a jerk to me. So reciprocity, maybe.
Yeah, that kind of.
Reciprocity. Okay, reciprocity, punishment. What was this again? Spite. I like that word, spite. Terrific. Okay, let's see what's happening. Thanks for the interesting conversation. Great. Okay, so how much would the proposer propose giving? 46. So a little bit similar to what is it that you said is going to happen. Minimum offer 20. Amazing, isn't this amazing? And then actually the predictions are pretty close to that. So you're pretty good at predicting things. So just based on 1 hour that we did all sorts of scenarios, you've gained some insights and you became really good predictors. In the first one, it wasn't clear whether we're good at predicting or not, but now you're getting very close to this. It really means that you're putting out the experimenter hat, like you're thinking about things, you've included probabilities already and putting equations and everything. So that's amazing. Homo economicus, it's a little bit tricky, just like you said, how we're thinking about this. Okay, if you would want to do some extensions, perhaps something quickly, what's like a top extension that you would do to the Ultimatum game? Yes, please.
You mentioned before, having more rounds of negotiation.
More than one round. Okay, so there's multiple rounds again and again. That's terrific. Actually, we'll come back to this next week and we'll show you some of that. Anything else? I see one response up. The appearance. So it's like a similar thing to what we had before, the evaluation of social class, or perhaps elderly or kid, or just the appearance, just making a sense of the way the person, what the person is. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think it depends whether you can actually see the person. Maybe there can be like a difference between you have the person like literally sitting right next to you when you give them the negotiation, or if it's something like they're sitting in the other room and then I just type to them my quote price.
Yeah.
It depends on whether the person is like physically present next to you. How that.
Let's try and make a prediction out of that. You think that if it's
the person is sitting next to you, then I predict that the average amount of money that we give will probably be a bit higher.
higher.
By contract.
Makes sense. All this, everything that we've discussed, is very much social psychology. This factor specifically, but also appearances, all of that is social psychology, evaluations of people. So we take into consideration all sorts of things in the context that even though these game theory paradigms were meant to look at economic behavior, pure economic behavior, we already see that there's a deviation between the Homo economicus and the way that people actually behave. And your predictions are much better than the predictions of the Homo economicus. So you've been very accurate in this game. Okay, let's take this one step forward. The last game I think that we'll play. Let me think if I want to do the judge or I want to do the trust game. Let's do the trust game because I feel like that's a kind of like the kind of elaboration that we like. So if we go to the trust game, let me just move forward. Yeah, we'll do this one. All right, so in the trust game, think about this. One participant first decides how much of an endowment to give the second participant. The first player is also informed that whatever he or she, I don't know why it's a he, sends will be tripled by the experimenter. So it's not only about how much you give, but whatever it is that you give, I as the experimenter will triple it. And then the responder can decide how much they want to give back. Is that clear? So if we look at this example over here, first participant gave 100. Now they have 0, 100 out of the 100, so they have 0. But the pot is 300. Therefore, as the second participant, out of the 300, how much would you give back? If they gave nothing, they kept 100, you have the pot is 0, therefore nothing to allocate back. If it's 50, then they keep 50. The experimenter triples this 150, and then you can decide as a second participant how much to give back. So first, as the first participant, how much would you offer? And then as the second participant, how much would you give back for each one of these sums? 100, 80, 60, 50, 40, and 20. So you can already see this is a more elaborate kind of game. There's a lot more of an interaction. You see the other person. Let's assume that all of us are together, experimenter and 2. And there's all sorts of things that are happening. Plus, I will triple the pot. Whatever it is that you give, I incentivize this by tripling the pot, and then the responder can give back. So think about this, and then go on the Mentimeter and tell me what your response is. All right, so we have quite a few. So I'm interested. Now I have very high expectations of your predictions, given that you were so accurate in the last one. What are your predictions about the first participant? How much would the first participant on average here in this classroom would give?
I think it probably depends on whether the money was given to them by the experimenter. It's like if the endowment effect, or if it's like it's out of the own pocket. It depends on where the money comes from.
Yeah, it's from me. It's from the experimenter. I gave them the 100.
So if you go 60.
Yeah, why 60?
Because so there's like so we have like a baseline of like about like 45 or something if there was if the money was triple, but then there's also the parts where you don't really trust the other person, right? You don't trust the other person to give back.
Okay, this is good. Okay, perhaps a preliminary question. I should have started with this. Thank you for that. What is this trust? Why is this called trust game? What's the trusting part here?
Because, well, you give money to another person, and then you have to trust them that they give back at least that much money to you for using even further profit, then
Mhm.
fine, they might just take all the money.
Okay.
Then I guess.
Yeah.
And there's that sort of risk there, I guess, that they might not give anything back to you. And you just lose money.
So trust is associated with risk to some extent. What would you say the relationship is?
Depends on whether the more trust you have in a person, the more risk you'd be willing to be able to put in a bet like this.
Okay, very good. This is very, very important. So when you have a situation where there's no trust whatsoever, what would be the behavior?
The behavior would be they probably they would act like the previous situation, like the money splitting thing, like they
Yeah.
motivated by the kind of like the whole fairness thing,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily be affected too much by the like the $300 thing, because they might like the tripling thing, because they might not expect that they will get any money back, but they will still be nice anyway.
All right. So thank you. In this kind of situation, what does the tripling part do to the interaction? What do you think that this change of tripling something, what did that add to the kind of interaction? What did that shift in people's preferences, if at all? Yes, please.
I think the tripling rather than like doubling is kind of different because
Okay.
you're splitting between the two. But if you give say any amount of money, it will be times by 3, and even if you divide that, you still have more than you start with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a reciprocity game.
Okay.
And then encourage generous in the sense that if you give more, you receive more. But if it's a double situation, then there's not much sense of like we do this together, then you get more money.
Okay, interesting. Any other insights? Things you wanted to add about this? Yes, please.
Basically, just I don't know.
Yes.
I think it increases both the upside and downside.
Yes, elaborate.
If you trust the person more, you're willing to give more. But if you don't trust him at all, I'd rather keep the one.
Okay. Yes. Very good. Are you curious to see what the results are? I am. How much would you give? I don't know how it's more than 100. I guess I should have separated this into two, but I think we had two here that did the 300, or maybe they meant 100. I don't really know what that is, or they're just messing around with me. So I think the first one, what would be, hold on, the second one, what would, if the first one gives 100, how much would you give back? 150. So what does 150 indicate for you? Fairness?
Not actually fair.
Okay, what would be fair?
Fairness would be actually 200.
Okay, why 200?
Because it means that from the experiment, that you gain $100, and the person who put the initial one also gains $100. This way, you're getting 150, and they're only getting 50, which isn't that fair, I guess.
150 is fairness. Why is it fairness? Why are you nodding? Yeah. But the first participant didn't have to do this, right? And they went out of their way to trust somebody else, taking a risk, because trust is associated with risk. So is that incorporated in this kind of answer or not?
I think so, because that extra $50, that I think is the price of the risk. Yeah,
They had 100, and now they have 150. That's what you're saying? So that increase.
That increases the reward for the risk.
So that's their payment for the trust.
Yes.
Very interesting. Okay, so it's not so much about the fairness about split half, but rather a different story, if I understand correctly.
Both, I guess.
How can it be both?
It's like for the person who's giving the $100, it's like a reward for the trust. But for the person who's giving the money back, that's I think for them it's more fairness.
I see. So depending on whose perspective you're looking at. Okay, interesting. Now what you can see here is that out of 300, 150, out of 240, less than half. So this is exactly half. This is less than half. If we're looking at 180, it's 83. So if I'm not mistaken, let me see. No, it's not always like this. I thought it's kind of like a declining percentage, but not so much. The last one, if the first one gave 20, it gives 60, it gives back 15. Which is interesting because actually the first participant already has a bulk of money. He already has 80, right? And you're still giving 15. Why would you give back 15 even though the person already has money? What is that about? What is this 15.8 about? Many of you said 0, but some of you said something above 0. What is that about?
I think people were like calculating in terms of like racial increment effect. We're like,
Yeah.
dun, 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 dun. Yeah, right. So like, it's like a
So maybe this is like a more, so we started from something very simple. We started from the Dictator game, and then we added kind of like ability to accept, reject, and then we added all sorts of complications. Maybe we have this, we've reached a level of complication where people are trying to simplify all sorts of things and focusing on one specific factor. Could be very interesting. Sometimes we have to make very elaborate decisions in a very complex situations, and we try to simplify this in order to be able to no, I narrowed this down for you, like I told you exactly what happens here, what happens here. But when we're in this kind of situation, do we really lay out all the options? Do we make a table? We really don't. In our groups, we just go ahead and start working as a group. We don't set out a contract. We don't try and put all the terms in. But now, hopefully, with a team contract, you'll have an ability to put things in a table. If I give you this, and the experimenter will triple this, what will you give me back? So in this course, you can think about your group work. There's a little bit of like a trust game. How would you maximize what is it that both of you will gain for me, the experimenter, in terms of a grade or in terms of your learning experience? So sometimes you can think of all these classical game theory paradigms as something that not only is about how much money is gained in these silly games, but also taking all sorts of things that are happening to you in this class in order to try and predict. Seems like you're pretty good at predicting right now. You can think about all sorts of factors that come into play. You can meet the other person or not. You can put the money in front of them or not. You can evaluate how elderly or how young they are. So you can do all sorts of things about your classmates, your group mates, in order to think how to best cooperate with them, how to establish trust, how to lay out all the options of if this is what's going to happen, this is how we respond. I think it's really important for you at the beginning of the course, once you embark on your journey together as a group and a team, to kind of set down the rules and the expectations from each other. So there's no things that, elaborate, complex interactions like doing this course to be simplified into one factor. But if you lay out things in a team contract, if you think about things in advance, perhaps it will increase the chances that all of you will gain, that all of you will do well together, that everybody would benefit. Okay, terrific. Thank you very much for your participation. This was lovely and lively. So please form your groups, do the team contracts. If you have any questions, please post us on Slack and we'll make some announcements about your first assessment component in the upcoming week.